I'll be honest, out of all the videos I've made, this one might be the most conspiratorial. Hear me out though. I've noticed that there's this one chord progression that seems to transcend time and musical genre, all while keeping one thing the same. It's all about the love. And I'm not just talking any old love, I'm talking smoochy smoochy romantic love. The chord progression goes 1, 1 major 7, 1 dominant 7 to 4. If you're wondering, it sounds like this. But it could also sound like this. Or even this. If you're not feeling the love quite yet, let's take a look at some songs that use this chord progression. The Beatles song Something is one of the most beautiful and well-known songs from their iconic album Abbey Road. It's also one of the rare Beatles songs written and sung by their lead guitarist, George Harrison. The chords go as follows: C, C major 7, C dominant 7, then F. There are a lot more chords that follow, but those first 4 chords are what we're going to focus on for this video. If you've noticed, the first 3 chords are just 3 variations of the C chord. They each have their own distinct character, but share the same basic triad. They, however, do not share the same tetrad. The difference between the chords is the 7th. The first chord doesn't have a 7th, but simply uses the 8th in its tetrad. The next chord uses the major 7th, which is a half step down from the 8th. The third chord uses the dominant 7th, which is a half step down from the major 7th. Finally, it resolves to a completely different chord altogether. If we translate the chords into Roman numerals, it'll look like this. The first 2 chords have what we call tonic function, meaning they are the home chord. The third and fourth chords are a bit more interesting though. The 1 dominant 7 chord is a secondary dominant that tonicizes the 4 chord. To put that into layman's terms, the F chord is the new key, and the C7 is the transition into that. The entire chord progression is actually pretty interesting, especially the way it works its way back into the home key of C. Something is truly a lover's love song. George Harrison wrote it for his wife at the time, Pattie Boyd. Things didn't end up working out for them, but trust me, these two were seriously in love. If you listen to the original recording, you can just hear the lust in Harrison's voice. Here is my terrible attempt at recreating that lust. The next song is actually one that I talked about in my last video. Go watch that if you haven't yet. This is probably the quintessential love song of your grandma's generation. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. You'd be like heaven to touch. I wanna hold you so much. If you don't know it, this song is called Can't Take My Eyes Off You by the lovely Frankie Valli, although it's better known by its alternative title, I Love You Baby. I Love You Baby. The song's first verse starts out with the exact same chord progression as the Beatles' Something, although instead of C major, it's in E major. Even though it's in a different key, the nature of the chord progression is the same. The chords share the same function in the context of their respective keys. They also share the same Roman numerals. If you want to impress your date this Valentine's Day, try singing this song, seriously. The lyrics are sure to make them gush with joy and romance. Just like Frankie Valli's voice melts your heart, the 1 chord almost sounds like it's slowly melting into the 4 chord. Our next lovely song is a bit more old school. I'm saying that as if the first 2 songs I showed you weren't old school. It's called In a Sentimental Mood by Duke Ellington. In a sentimental mood, I can see the stars come through my room. While your loving attitude is like a flame that lights the gloom. My cover I'm showing you is based off Ella Fitzgerald's recording with Barney Kessel. While this song still uses the chord progression of love, there are a couple of small modifications. The first modification is that it's in a minor key. In my specific case, it's in G minor. This doesn't really change the function of the chord progression, besides giving it a more somber feel. The more interesting modification is that there's an extra chord inserted in there, the 1-6 chord. It comes right after the 1 dominant 7 chord. This gives us one extra step in our chromatically descending tetrad leg before resolving to the 4 chord. It's just prolonging that oozy, melty 1 chord. If you ask me, this chord progression is basically the chord progression of love on steroids. I highly recommend you listen to Ella Fitzgerald sing In a Sentimental Mood instead of my lame cover. Her voice truly shows the soothing and comforting side to romantic love. The last song I want to show you, I'll admit, is a bit of a stretch. But with all these old songs I've been showing you, we needed something a little more contemporary. This 2011 hit is called Fine by Me, written and sung by Andy Grammer. You're not the type of girl to remain with the guy too shy, too afraid to say he'll give his heart to you forever. I'm not the boy that will fall to his knees with his hands clasped tight, begging you please to stay with him for worse or for better. It took me a while to find a modern pop song that uses this chord progression. But what do you know? The one song I found is a romantic love song. The controversial part is, well, it doesn't exactly use the chord progression of love. Here's the chord progression to Fine by Me. The reason I included it is because it fits the main function of the chord progression of love. If you noticed, it sounds very similar. It contains that chromatically descending tetrad leg, which resolves into the 4. Also, if you play the chord progression of love instead of the original chord progression, it fits perfectly. If you ask me, it functionally sounds the exact same. Andy Grammer's voice and lyrics show us a more happy-go-lucky side to romantic love, which is different from our first 3 songs. But hey, love is love. I think we can agree this is a cool chord progression. But is it really the chord progression of love? The answer is maybe. If we can be sure of one thing, it's not a very common chord progression. You won't find a lot of pop songs that contain it, especially in the last 20 years. Every song that I found that uses it is quite lovey-dovey in a romantic way. Now you might be thinking, aren't most songs love songs? Can't you just say that any chord progression is the chord progression of love and then find 4 love songs that use it? Yes, you could. But you could probably also find a bunch of non-love songs that use it. When I was researching the chord progression of love, every song I found, without exception, was a romantic love song. The fact that it's such an uncommon chord progression, I think, is what makes it special. If you're writing a song for your special someone, try using the chord progression of love. It might just be a unique flavor that your lover isn't used to hearing. It'll sound like you put some real thought into it, instead of just using some overused, boring, generic chord progression. Also, if my conspiracy theory is correct, your lover might subconsciously associate what they're hearing with love. Ooh la la. It's entirely possible that I'm completely wrong about this whole video. Let me know if I am. To all you lovers and loners, have a lovely Valentine's Day. See you next time, bye bye!